Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon, all, and Happy New Year. I think we're still in the realms of Happy New Yearness. Welcome to Vale of Glamorgan Council's Cabinet meeting on the 9th of January 2025. Thank you for anyone, if those who've sent their good wishes. I am recovered, although I still coughing quite a bit. I'm Councillor Liz Burnett and Chair of the meeting as the leader of the Vale of Glamorgan Council and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. We're again using the Council's hybrid platform today, and so the usual reminders. The meeting's being live streamed and recorded and will be uploaded to the Vale of Glamorgan Council's website as soon as practicable after the meeting. For those of us in the chamber, we should ensure our microphones are not activated, and for those that are joining online, they should mute themselves when not speaking to avoid any background noise or feedback. Usual rules indicate that you want to speak by using the raise hand function, or in here we'll be putting our hands up. So without further ado, we can move on from there onto the agenda. I just manipulate my screen. And agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. I have one apology, and that is from Deputy Leader Councillor Bronwyn Brooks, who's on other business. I think everyone else is either here or online, aren't they? So that's great. Thank you. If I can then just take the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of December 2024. And can I move those as a true record of the meeting?
And I'll second them, Leader.
Thank you, Gwyn. That's great. No alterations or anything? That's fine. Agenda item 3, to receive declarations of interest. And if there are any in the nature of such interest, I haven't had any. Are we aware of any?
Yeah, no declarations received for this particular meeting.
Thank you. So we can move on to the main reports of the meeting. And the first one is the final housing revenue account, the HRA budget proposals for next year, 2025-26, the rent setting for 2025-26, and the housing revenue account business plan for 2025-26. And if I can just get to the right agenda item on here, that's great. So I think what we have to say first off is that the housing revenue account is a ring-fenced account that is self-funded, and so it needs to be sustainable across the board for all the things that it is seeking to deliver. So, just lost it again. So it's funded mainly by, the council house rents, expenditure, costs of staffing to manage the provision, repairs and maintenance costs of housing stock, the finance costs to contribute to the capital programme. So there are all sorts of things that we need to deliver for now and into the future in terms of good quality homes for local residents. And to do that, we need to set out the proposed rents and service charges for the coming financial year. And that's part of the Rented Homes Wales Act that the council's required to give 2 months' notice of any increase in council rents to council tenants. So in order to do that, we have to make sure that it is fully sustainable. The Welsh Government sets the level of maximum allowable increases in council tax, and for this year that is at 2.7% for 2025-26. We've also got to ensure that the council has a viable 30-year housing business plan. And so, we have to make sure that the financial modelling is completely sound and sustainable. There are a range of things that the council does to basically support those that are council tenants. And one of the things that is very valuable to our tenants is that we commit that we'll take the following actions on behalf of our tenants. So we will not carry out evictions due to financial hardship in the next year where tenants are talking to us. And quite often it can be easy to put letters in drawers and not actually think about financial difficulties. But as long as people are talking to us, and we will seek to engage, that we would not seek to evict tenants. We continue to provide targeted support. We look to maximise the use of all suitable housing stock, and there is discussion as well about how we update those, how we renovate those, how we get them to good quality standards, that we build on existing engagement with tenants on rent setting. We commit to investing in existing homes to keep them safe, warm and affordable to live in. And so while our new build properties are low carbon, and I think it's EPCA or something. I'm just looking at the Cabinet Member for Housing, which is the measure of low carbon. That means that they are actually cheaper to run and they are more cost effective. And so we don't ignore our existing homes, and we're seeking to retrofit those. We work in partnership with others as tenants, Welsh Government, funders and other partners to develop a consistent approach to affordability. So within the report, it goes through the average rents for different properties, and in terms of highest and lowest. So the final budget for 2025-26 actually creates a surplus of 41,000, and that's for contingencies. We need to make sure that we can cover any eventualities. Let's go through on to I think there's been much talk of the council's building programme, and the building programme is, we are into the hundreds now in terms of the number of homes that we are delivering per year. But often, if we have to borrow for that, there are revenue costs associated, which also contributes to our costs within that. So this report went to scrutiny committee last night for their comments, and I attended to listen to the discussions, as did Councillor Gwyn John, Councillor Mark Wilson, and also Councillor Sandra Perks as the Cabinet Member, and all participated in that conversation. At the end of what was a full conversation, they actually did not make any recommendations to the as a reference back to Cabinet, and subsequently noted the report. So in relation to that, I mean, that is a verbal reference from that scrutiny that the report was noted. So I think on that basis we can go through to the recommendations, and I'm just checking. I think I've got to make a slight amendment to one. So I'll go back to the start of the recommendations. So the first one is that Cabinet recommends to full council the approval of the final housing revenue account budget proposals for 2025-26 as are set out below. I won't read the table, it's laid out. How have I managed to do that? Hang on. Right. Then paragraph 2, this needs a slight amendment. Its Cabinet recommends to full council an average rent increase of 2.7% as set out in paragraphs 2.17, and it should say paragraph 2.25. So if we could amend that. And then recommendation 3 says Cabinet recommends that full council approves the increase suggested for other services as set out in the table below and in paragraphs, and this should change. It currently says 2.18 to 2.25. It's been slight formatting error. It should be 2.27 to 2.26. I'm just thinking it should be 2.26 to 2.27. So if we can make a slight amendment on that. Recommendation 4 is that Cabinet recommends that full council approves all changes to rents and service charges to be implemented from the 1st of April 2025, with the first week of April being a non-chargeable rent week, and that increased notice is sent to tenants 2 months in advance of the new charges coming into effect as required by the Renting Homes Wales Act 2016. Recommendation 5 is that Cabinet approves the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan 2025 to 2054. And finally, that the urgent decision procedure as set out in 1514 of the Council's Constitution be used in order for the final Housing Revenue Account budget proposals 2025-26, rent setting and housing business plan to be referred to full council on the 13th of January 2025. That is purely being done to get it to full council on Monday. And I would move.
And I will second the recommendations, Leader.
Thank you, Gwyn. And everyone's in agreement, yeah. I can see the Cabinet member for housing nodding, and the reason that I take that report is it's a financial report. So although we work closely together. So agenda item 5, just shut that down so I don't get confused. Agenda item 5 is the Cabinet quarterly work programmes, October to December 2024 and January to March 2025. So in some ways it's a look backwards at the Cabinet programme up to now, and then looking forward to what we're doing over the next few months. I think it's always encouraging to see that reports have come forward on the times that they were proposed to come forward. So as expected, so if I can thank the Cabinet team and also relevant officers for getting their reports to us on time so that we could do that and there's no hold up to business. And then a fairly packed Cabinet programme over the coming months. So we've got the standard types of things coming forward as we do in terms of the budget, but this year we've actually also got the corporate plan, and that's a new one for the next 5 years, so that's an important document to take forward. But there's also things about events that are being proposed. They're coming forward in March. And there was something else that I spotted on here that I thought was really interesting. Yes, updates in February on the one is the Levelling Up Fund round 3 updates. So once we've met next with the UK government, we will be able to bring a report forward to update people on that. So that's all straightforward. And as I said, it's just fairly simple recommendations. And the first one is the updates to the Cabinet Quarterly Work Programme for October to December 2024, which are attached to Appendix 1, be agreed. And secondly, that the Cabinet Quarterly Work Programme from January to March 2025, attached to Appendix 2, be endorsed. And I'd move.
And I will second, Leader.
Thank you, Gwyn. So the next agenda item that we have, if I go forward, is over to the Cabinet Member for Education, Arts and Welsh Language. And that's the agenda item 6, Coordinated Admission Arrangements Scheme 2027-28. Over to you, Rhiannon.
Thank you. This is bringing back the report after the consultation period. So the purpose of the report is to advise Cabinet of the outcome of the consultation exercise on the Vale of Glamorgan's Coordinated Admissions Arrangement Scheme for 27 to 28. The Council is required under the Education, Coordination of School Admission Arrangements and Miscellaneous Amendments, Wales Regulations 24, to formulate a scheme for coordinating admission arrangements for maintained schools within their area. This includes boarding schools, that excludes sixth form places, maintain special schools and maintain nursery schools. The first coordinated admission scheme will apply to admission arrangements for the 27-28 school year, and this will be subject to annual consultation going forward. The consultation closed on the 29th of November last year, and the Council received 7 responses, and these are included in Appendix C of the report. So there are recommendations which are set out to ensure the Council meets its obligations in terms of the Education, Coordination of School Admission Arrangements and Miscellaneous Amendments Regulations 24, and the Council is required, as others are, to consult and formulate a coordinated schools admission scheme by January 25 for the 27-28 academic year. So the recommendations are: 1, the Cabinet considers this report and its associated appendices. The Cabinet approves the Coordinated Admission Arrangement Scheme for all maintained schools in the Vale of Glamorgan for the 27-28 academic year. I'd like to move those recommendations, please.
And I'm happy to second those. Thanks, Rhiannon. And it's back to you then for agenda item 7, and that's the disposal of caretaker's house, or former caretaker's house, at the 5 St Paul's Avenue, Barry. So over to you.
Thank you. Following the transfer of Yscol St Barrack to a new school and the relocation of the resident, permission is sought to proceed with the disposal of the land and property as indicated in Appendix A. The land contains a 3-bedroom, unused end-of-terrace house, which was previously the school caretaker's house. The property has been vacated and is surplus to requirements. The capital receipt from the disposal of this land and property will contribute to the delivery of the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme. So we have to declare the site surplus to requirements as the land and property is no longer required for education purposes, to ensure the Council obtains best consideration in accordance with its statutory and fiduciary obligations, to legally formalise the disposal of the land and property to obtain a capital receipt which will be used to reduce prudential borrowing and contribute towards funding the Council's Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, ensuring compliance with statute. So there are 3 recommendations. 1, that the above property and land is declared surplus to the Council requirements. 2, that delegated authority is granted to the Head of Finance or the Section 151 officer to dispose of the land as shown, edged in red on the plan at Appendix A, by the most appropriate means, in consultation with the Director of Learning and Skills and the Monitoring Officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services, on terms and conditions to be agreed. 3, the Cabinet authorises the Monitoring Officer and Head of Legal and Democratic Services to prepare, complete and execute the appropriate legal documentation required to dispose of the site at the appropriate time. I'd like to move those recommendations, please.
Thank you. And again, happy to second. No dissent from in the room or online, so that's agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 8 is a report from the Cabinet Member of Neighbourhood and Building Services in relation to car parking. So it's over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Chair. This report covers quite a lot of areas of parking. And for those who have got this report, if you go to page 7, that's where I'm going to start looking at it. First of all, we're going to be looking at what we call off-street car parking proposals. Now, off-street basically means car parks. So we're looking at car parks here. And if we look at the income we generated on 2.5, it was around £911,000. But most of the income is raised from coastal car parks, which is around £861,000. But there are certain car parks which we do not charge. Some of these are on the beach, near beaches, and clearly we need to be looking at that going forward, because as you know, our financial circumstances mean that we need to raise more additional finance. And also, we also got to remember, of course, that we also got costs associated with the management of these car parks. So if we go on to the different car parks, we'd be looking at charges. If we're looking at, for instance, 2.11 on the report on page 8, we're looking at Barry Coldnap. It's proposed that charges be levied here. It is a popular car park in an area with limited on-street parking due to extensive parking restrictions being in place. The car park has many spaces and in good condition. The car park has suffered a bit from antisocial behaviour, and in fact, we felt that the charging could assist in reducing this because it will be better managed because of the fact we're charging, and therefore there will have to be more maintenance of it and more people doing enforcement. The next one is 2.2 is Bronyon Moor. Now Bronyon Moor is that we propose this is by Coldnap. Car park is close to Parade and Knapp Gardens. We felt that if we didn't charge there would be quite a lot of displacement from Coldnap. And equally, we know that it's quite a well-used car park. We're also aware that we also need to improve the condition of this car park. And this will be very much part of it. So prior to the charging, we would make sure that the car park comes up to a better standard than it is at the moment, especially in relation to its entrance. And I have visited it recently myself and seen that it does need some improvements. Now, the one in Clanwick Major, we are going to be discussing that with the town council. So we propose not to charge for the car park there. The one in Ogmore by Sea and Portobello, we do propose to charge, but we're going to be looking at that with Dunraven Estates and the Ogmore Community Station prior to any charging there. Now, the one in Penarth, Clun, Passat, we're not going to be charging there. It's a low number of spaces and it's not going to be very cost effective. But in Cliff Walk, we do propose to charge here. It's a popular car park, especially in the summer. We know that the road servicing is not great condition, but we do aim to improve it prior to us charging. We also propose to do charging in West Farm in Southern Down. Although we know it's small, it does suffer a bit of antisocial behaviour, but we think that by charging there, we'll actually reduce the amount of antisocial behaviour, and that will be good. It also means that it'll be less displacement as well. Now on 2.19, we got a change here, all right, in terms of off-street parking. So we're looking at possible changes from 10 till 11 o'clock, but we will be looking at that. We also, on 2.20, we have a scenario. Now we have different scenarios on the 15%, 12% and 10%. These are quite conservative with a small c in terms of possible savings. from £147,000 in terms of income generation up until 220. But of course, it could be more, but we shall wait and see. We also got costs in relation to the parking on 2.21 of the machines. But we reckon that overall it will pay itself within 2 years. I then move on to on-street car parking proposals. Now, these are going to be in 2 areas we've identified. Firstly, Barry Island, and secondly, Penarth Seafront. Now, both of them, as you know, are very, very popular places. And at the moment, we got an anomaly where we do charge for, especially in Barry Island, we do charge for parking off-street, but not on-street. And this seems a bit strange considering that in Barry Island, the best views, or if you look at what we call Barry Baydos, are actually looking over that amazing beach we got there, and it's free. And that does seem to be a bit of an anomaly. But what we do propose to do is that we have looked at changing the regime slightly. So we will not charge until 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. And that's part of our recommendations, proposals, instead of 8 a.m. because we want local people to visit the site early. We want them to exercise themselves and maybe their animals with them, and to go around and to, and to enjoy it, especially local people, before the visitors come. Of course, one of the issues, as you probably realise, is that the one in Barry Island is incredibly well used. There's lots of people use it, and there is quite a significant cost of maintaining the toilets, maintaining the beach cleansing regime, and therefore we've got to provide some sort of income in order to continue that to a high standard. And we obviously want to do that. We know that Barry Island has been very much in the news recently over Christmas, thanks to Gavin and Stacey, but we want to continue that popularity of it. And really, we want to ensure it's got a high standard. So when people visit Barry Island, it's very good quality. And I know that the traders have done significantly well out of it, and we want to support them as much as possible on this. In terms of the Penarth Seafront, we're looking at primarily the Esplanade, but not just the Esplanade. We're looking at Cliff Top, and we're also looking at Cliff Parade and section of Beach Road and Bridgman Road. And obviously, we're looking at an income projection possibly of around, around £78,000, the Esplanade, and Barry Island about £125,000. We know that these places are popular, and I know that the Esplanade in particular has been very popular because of COVID. It really came to its own there. We got lots of fantastic traders overlooking the Esplanade who are doing really well, and we want to maintain the high quality and high standards that the traders and the public expect. But of course, that comes with a cost, and therefore we got to support that cost. And I think that is really important as well. And obviously, we got costs in relation to that, but we're looking at total capital costs of these locations, 159,000, and we expect to pay that back in just around about a year. Okay, probably around about a year, and hopefully even less than a year. Now, the next part of the report concerning residential permit parking. Now, we got some good news here. Unlike many other councils nearby, we don't charge for residential parking permits, nor are we going to going forward. What we are looking at is looking at information technology to help us out here, so that we have electronic permits, so that it will be done in a much more cost-effective manner. And hopefully, with the enforcement regime we might have, we may be able to extend residential schemes for this coming year and hopefully next year, because I do get quite a lot of emails as the relevant cabinet member on extending residential permits, but obviously there is a cost with that. but obviously we're going to try and reduce that cost by using IT. But I'd like to emphasise again, there's going to be no charging for this. Now, the fourth aspect to this report is Court Road multi-storey car park. Now, as you know, that car park is a multi-storey one. It's the only one we have in the Vale of Glamorgan, but it's been around since 1973. Now, sadly, over that time, its use has steadily declined quite considerably. And as a result, it's become a real cost to us, the council. So much so that we spend, according to 2.54, around £89,000, with a significant amount of money. But not only this, we really got a structural issue with the defects of £214,000. That's going to cost us quite a lot of money to repair and enhance. But also, you've got to realise that modern day cars now are much bigger than they used to. So in 1973, when people were driving their Ford Cortinas and cars like that, and Ford Escorts, they were a lot smaller, as people remember. And I remember as a kid, it being in a Vauxhall Viva, driving round, and it was a lot smaller than modern day's cars. Exactly. And of course, when people go around in modern cars in multi-story, they find it a bit of a struggle. So the argument is that really, is it really fit for purpose? But we also have other car parks nearby, like in Wyndham Street, when really we feel that people could move to. But we also want to encourage people to do active travel and also using public transport as well, and also car sharing whenever possible. So really, we want to encourage this. I mean, after all, this bit of Hickman Road is quite a busy Hickman Road, but equally, it's quite viable in terms of using different forms of public transport and active travel possibilities. And we want to encourage that. Plus, there are quite a few car parks nearby. So those are sort of four areas. So what I want to do now, I want to go to the recommendations. Now, there are quite a few here, so I'll read them out. That Cabinet agrees in principle introduction of coastal car park charges at Coldnap, Brondemore, Portobello, Cliff Walk and West Farm in Southern Down. That Cabinet agrees in principle the introduction of on-street charging at locations specified at Barry Island and Penarth Esplanade. That Cabinet agrees in principle the closure of the multi-storey car park at Court Road in Barry and to provision of a future report on the building and land at its location. Now, number 4, that Cabinet agrees in principle to no charges being levied on permits for residential parking schemes. That Cabinet agrees in principle the introduction of digital residential parking permits and to using excess revenue collected from residential parking enforcement in pursuance of creating several new residential parking locations each year. Number 6, that in pursuance of recommendation 2, Cabinet agrees in principle to granting delegated authority to the Director of Environment and Housing in consultation with the Cabinet member for Neighbourhood and Building Services to agree the extent for charging on-street for Barry Island and Penarth Seafront as outlined in the report, and then progressing to the Traffic Road Order advertising process. Then number 7, that Cabinet receives a further report on the future management arrangements at the car park in Cumculdur and Clanwick Major. And number 8, that this report is referred to the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee for consideration at its meeting on the 14th July. Number 9, that the Cabinet uses Council urgent decision procedure as set out in section 15.14 of the Council's Constitution be agreed in order for the report to be considered by the Environment Regeneration Committee for its consideration at its meeting on the 14th of January. And number 10, that in view of no adverse recommendations briefing the committee, recommendations 1 to 7 be agreed, and I so move.
Thanks, Mark. So you're adding in the change to the timing for the on-street car park. So we need to make sure that that's noted within the minutes. But the other thing I think we discussed
It's the 4 hours.
is the 4 hours.
That's right.
And on reflection, Cabinet felt that for such prime spots, we actually want to create churn. amongst those, get as many people as possible, being able to stop off for lunch, coffee, whatever. So the maximum length of stay there is 4 hours. If people want to be longer, they should go to the car park.
That's right.
I also think, I don't know, I might have missed it, that we discussed the season tickets that
Yes.
are available, and if we expand the coastal resort car parks that are charged, they will be included in the season ticket. So
That's right.
for currently, I think it's about £2 a week equivalent. You can stay at any of the coastal car parks, so it'd be from Barry Penarth right the way down to Ogmore,
That's right.
for as long or as long as you want, as often as you want, for about £2 a week. And I think at the moment we're exploring a conversation with the credit union, local
That's right.
credit union, that if if people would prefer to spread out the cost of a season ticket, that there will be arrangements there. But we can update on that once we've finalised those conversations. So thank you for that. I'm very happy to second those recommendations and those amendments.
you.
Is there any? I can see Ruby, you're online. Did you want to speak?
Yes, really, just to, I realise, Liz, that you've seconded this report now, but really just to reiterate that, we are, trying to protect, our local residents and, locals using these areas. And I hope that people will see that the charges and the possibility of having a season ticket is a way of, parking down at the Esplanade if you're a regular user of regularly swim, for example, or, walk your dog, that, we are, I hope, people will see that we are trying to protect, our...
Rupert's gone off. Right. Do you want to come back in, Ruber? Your hand's still indicating. I need to. You want to go in? I wanted to.
Sorry, I
clarify.
don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I need to.
I do apologise.
I just need to clarify for you, Ruber, that the season ticket covers the car park, doesn't cover on street.
Yes.
So yeah, that's all right. No, you did.
Yes.
I just did. I wanted to clarify that.
Yes,
Great.
no, and just that, we are listening to residents and locals using that area, but obviously having charging does mean that there is for the local businesses, they'll have a quicker turnover in terms of people using that area, and we do have lots of visitors, and that does create a lot of mess, a lot of wear and tear that we also have to be able to deal with and pay for. So yes, I hope I would like to second this also.
Yeah, you can third it then. That's all right. So yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's also another point worth making is that what we're looking at is a contribution to costs. This is still a cost.
That's right.
But when I'll have to double check, but and this is going back a while, that the bins on Barry Island Esplanade were on a busy day are emptied hourly.
That's right.
Not per day, and there are major costs, and we want our resorts.
Well, that's, as I emphasised before, leader, that we want these places to be high quality resorts.
Exactly.
And that's so important. Therefore, we need that money to make sure that it is.
Yeah.
And if anything, we want it to be even better, don't we?
Yes, I would, and I hopefully we'll have a lot more conversation on this basis when it comes to scrutiny, because there's more information that we can bring forward to provide more information for discussion. So you've moved it, I've seconded it, Ruber's thirded it. Nobody is making any comments, so that's agreed. Thank you all. Then we have The final item under part 1 is agenda item 9, and that is the supporting people procurement exercise, and this is for the Cabinet Member for Public Sector Housing and Tenant Engagement. So over to you, Sandra.
Thank you, Leader. So, as you said, this is a report on supporting people's procurement exercise. The Housing Support Grant HSG programme is the policy and funding framework for delivering housing-related support to vulnerable people in different types of accommodation and across all tenures. The programme takes forward a number of strategic aims reflecting community safety and health and social care and wellbeing objectives. It aims to deliver high-quality and strategically planned housing-related support services that are cost-effective, complement existing services and provide service users with the best possible outcomes. The programme contributes to meeting the aims of improving lives and communities, Homes in Wales, the National Housing Strategy and the 10-year homelessness plan, with a strong emphasis on the prevention of homelessness. It's also essential in assisting the local authority to fill its duties under the Housing Wales Act 2014 and the Vale of Glamorgan's Homelessness Prevention Strategy. There are no direct resources implication associated with this report. All funding requirements identified for resourcing under the Housing Support Grant programme is financed through grant funding from Welsh Government. The SGIN service is a floating support service that delivers housing-related support for vulnerable people with learning disabilities and or autism. The existing contract expires in January 2025. The Supporting People team has recently completed a procurement exercise to ensure continuity of service. This report brings to the attention of Cabinet the outcome of the procurement exercise. A request for Cabinet to accept the most advantageous tender bid and to execute the contract for delivery of the SGIN service is detailed later on this agenda at part 2. So the recommendation for part 1 is that the Cabinet notes the contents of the report with a view to taking decisions on the award of the contract detailed within the part 2 report later on in this agenda. And I move.
Thanks, Sandra, and I'm happy to second that. And we'll move on to the other part of it shortly. I can't see anybody indicating on that item, so that's agreed. So I don't have any urgent items under part 1, but as I've just said, we do have an item for discussion on today's agenda under part 2. That's obviously linked to agenda item 9. Just as for completeness, these are matters that are considered to be confidential, and therefore the meeting will need to move into private session where such matters can be discussed under part 2. I need therefore to ask Cabinet to agree to move to part 2 and ask the Cabinet Officer to stop the recording of this open session and ensure that no members of the public are present after this point and only relevant parties remain to hear the details of the items to be discussed. Following the meeting, the outcome of the part 2 discussions will be formally captured as part of the minutes of the meeting and will advise all parties of the decisions of the Cabinet for the relevant items. So, cutting to the chase, therefore, can I formally move part 2?
Part 2.
Thank you, Gwyn. And therefore, ask the Cabinet Officer to ensure that only relevant parties remain from this point on and for the live stream and recording to be stopped.